It's through proper macronutrients that fuel your body. So when I work with somebody, it's very much about your body is a beautiful sports car. How do we put the right fuel in it to make you run effectively and stop looking at food as some sort of reward or something like this is bad or this is good? Like, no, this is fuel. It's all fuel. It's what kind of fuel do you need? Once you're able to figure that out, your body is going to respond. You're going to feel better. And when you eat stuff that you know like isn't in alignment with your fueling needs, your body gives you feedback. And it's like, yeah, that didn't feel so good. I don't, aches, pains, blemishes. I don't like that. So our body is giving us signals every day. We just need to listen to them.
This is Uncommonly Remarkable. We have surprisingly casual discussions about the lives and notable accomplishments of community leaders, entrepreneurs, and everyday folks like you and me. Think of this podcast as an opportunity to learn something new and to pick up on an entrepreneurial tip or two through open conversation. I'm Artis Beatty. I'm a doctor of optometry and the chief medical officer for My Eye Doctor OD. Though we will inevitably touch on topics within my area of expertise, the opinions and conversations held here are separate from my work with My Eye Doctor. Welcome to the show. Christine, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you today, and thank you so much for taking some time to be with us.
It is awesome to be here, and I'm really excited to share with your audience some tips and some strategies to really optimize health and so that everyone can just live their best life with the highest quality.
And we are looking forward to it. I mean, I think it's one of those things that as the show has really developed, I've latched on to wanting to know how can I make myself better, improve my quality of life, increase my health span. And because of that, we've had lots of conversations around physical health and mental health and how you put all these things together. We've learned from folks who are experts in Chinese medicine. We've learned from holistic practitioners. And so it's just a nice combination to be able to sit and have a conversation with you today and talk a little bit about what you do and bring some tips to the audience, as you mentioned. So why don't we start by saying, well, what is it that you do to help people live their best lives?
Yeah, so my background is I have a PhD in health practice research. I'm a registered nurse, and I am also a certified personal trainer. And so what I've been able to do is infuse those three things together, along with my own life experience, to put together some really great protocols for women, specifically who, are starting to enter middle age. Things are changing. They're starting to feel pretty discouraged of what's going on with their health. And then I come with, here's the blueprint. Let me help you navigate through these challenges. And I took my experience. So when I'm 50, and when I was in my early 40s, I just was going through it. I was 20 pounds heavier. I was energetically depleted. My spirit was dampened. And I was like, what is happening to me? And so I took my background as a researcher, as a scientist, as a healthcare provider, and got to work and went through the research to understand, okay, what does a 41-year-old female need in terms of what should I eat? How should I move? How do I get my mind right? And I was an N of one where I got to work, and I really changed the trajectory of my health span through, strategic fitness, nutrition that wasn't off the wall crazy, and sensible things that actually make a huge difference.
And I think that's the real key, right? Sensible things. There's always what we would consider, say, the fad diet or what's in now. And not often are those things something that can be sustainable. And when it comes to creating a health span, you need to have something that is sensible and sustainable in order to continue to do it. So it's part of your life and not something that you're trying to jump in and jump out of, right?
Absolutely. And I was desperate. So I tried all of those things first, because you'll see like a commercial like, hey, you can lose 30 pounds in 30 days. And I was like, oh, sign me up. And then you get into it and you're like, oh, this is terrible. And what women who come to me, they've done all these things, and in the process, they've really hurt their metabolism because they've had these massive swings in being in a caloric deficit for too long, or totally not taking in enough, no carbs, no fat, not enough protein. And so their body is like, what is going on? And so it's almost rehabbing your metabolism to get things back to where they should be, and realizing that if it sounds too good to be true, it 1000% is.
So, it's interesting when you start to think about the research that you were doing, because in general, if you think about the fitness industry in general and kind of just science-based research, it has been traditionally based on men. So you have a big cohort of men, usually younger men, and kind of following them through time and making decisions. So if you think about say exercise research and protocols, generally they'll take a group of people who are in their 20s, they will separate them into groups, they'll be male, and they will say no exercise group, lots of exercise group, exercise with supplements group, and you get a result. And so those are fairly easy to find, and they're pretty applicable to men in general, but maybe not so much for women because of the difference in the physiology. How did you go about looking for research so you know what to do?
Yeah. So first of all, we're not small men. It's not translatable to say that the 18-year-old who had his quad muscle dissected in a lab during college is going to apply to the things that I need as a woman whose hormones are changing, whose body's changing. We're not the same. Luckily, we've got a great group of women scientists right now who are forging the way and doing research specifically on women. So I spend a lot of my time just digging into that literature to understand what's going on. And the good news is the conclusions that people have reached are pretty straightforward, right? If you're a female, like, you have got to eat more protein. You've got to drink more water. Carbohydrates are your friend. It's just not the bad kind. And so where we've landed as a body of literature on women's health and wellness is it's pretty straightforward and accepted that there is an answer, and it's not a fad, and it's not a cleanse or anything like that. It's through proper macronutrients that fuel your body. So when I work with somebody, it's very much about your body is a beautiful sports car. How do we put the right fuel in it to make you run effectively, and stop looking at food as some sort of reward or something like this is bad or this is good? Like, no, this is fuel. It's all fuel. It's what kind of fuel do you need? Once you're able to figure that out, your body is going to respond. You're going to feel better. And when you eat stuff that like isn't in alignment with your fueling needs, your body gives you feedback. And it's like, yeah, that didn't feel so good. I don't, I've got aches, pains, blemishes. I don't like that. So our body is giving us signals every day. We just need to listen to them.
That makes so much sense. For the audience, we have basically a 50-50 split, men and women. And so we've had some conversations around andropause and kind of explain what that is for the men. But you mentioned you going into your 40s, things were different. Can you talk to us a little bit about perimenopause and menopause and what they are and how they affect you? Because I think for the men listening, friends, family, significant others, other people in their lives, it's good for us to all understand what it is that women are dealing with so that we can talk about this.
Yeah, such a great question. So the women in your life aren't crazy. It's just that the way that their hormones have changed is very sudden. So, the men, when they start to get older, it's a really nice gradual decline in testosterone and growth hormone. And it's nothing that just hits you like a brick wall. Women, once you turn 35, you start to make less estrogen and progesterone. When you start to turn 30, women make less testosterone. So we've got 3 different hormones that are so important for our physiologic well-being that start to plummet pretty quickly. You know, the testosterone going down in your early 30s, you don't really notice that as much. Maybe you can't get away with the stuff that you did before. You know, I could eat whatever I want as long as I work out, it'll be fine. You'll notice that starts to change. But when your estrogen and progesterone start to decline at the age of 35, and then really start to decline in your early 40s, you're going to feel that significantly. You're going to immediately notice like weight gain around the middle, mood swings, mood instability. And I think for anyone who's, you know, has a woman in their life, their partner is going to be like, what is going on with her? Like, this is not the person that I'm normally used to hanging out with. Their libido becomes non-existent because those 3 hormones are very much connected to sexual function. And your mood is just changed significantly and not for the better. Now, we're in an era right now where people are starting to have serious conversations about hormone replacement therapy. And it's about time, because the research is very clear that hormone replacement therapy is safe and effective, and it actually helps us live longer. But my mom's generation, there's a whole generation of women who went through perimenopause and menopause on the cusp of the Women's Health Initiative, which came to the conclusion falsely that if you take hormones, you're going to get cancer. And it was really unfortunate that that happened, because a whole generation of women suffered through perimenopause, through menopause, and basically were told, suck it up, buttercup, like this is what's going to happen. Now, people my age are a lot more informed. We're advocating, and we're like, wait a minute, I'm really healthy. I want those hormones. I want to see if that's going to help me. And so that's the knowledge you need to empower yourself with, so that you can go to your healthcare provider and say, is this for me? And let's have a conversation together.
You know, it's really too bad with the research and the way the education around hormone therapy was. I mean, we're basically the same age, and I can remember growing up that it was a really big deal for someone to choose to have HRT, because a lot of the time people were afraid that they were going to end up with cancers, and so they would not do it. And people who did, people looked at them like, "Okay, why are you rolling the dice?" And people would not really even have those types of conversations with their doctors. So, what really changed that mindset, and how did the pendulum start to swing the other way?
Well, some very esteemed scientists, first of all, went back and they analyzed the data from the Women's Health Initiative, and they were like, wait a minute, the conclusions that you drew based on this data are inaccurate. The second problem with that study is the sample of women were much older. They were all postmenopausal. And the sweet spot, if you're going to start hormones, is before you actually start to feel significant symptoms. So you want to kind of get ahead of it. They gave these women the drug Prempro, which was derived from horse urine. Well, that's right there. You're like, I wonder what that means. Older women in general are going to be at higher risk for all cancers just based on their age. So the conclusions that were drawn from the Women's Health Initiative were false. Then people went back and they're like, okay, we need to redo these studies. We need to do them with the right sample size of women who are the proper age. We need to use the right type of estrogen. And we're also going to use progesterone. And so what they've found, and there's been many, many, many studies that have shown, if you are a female, you're in good health, you're actually going to be protected cardiovascularly, neurologically. It's been shown to decrease the incidence of Alzheimer's disease, dementia, Parkinson's disease. So for me, as a 50-year-old female, having a conversation with my provider, it's like, okay, let's just, what are the risks here for me? And for me, there weren't any really. Like, I'm a very healthy person. I don't have any sort of breast cancer in my family or anything like that. And even so, they're still saying it's probably okay. So there's a lot of great science, again, that is valid and reliable. And people need to do their homework. We've got
Mm-hmm.
all of this information available to us at our fingertips. You can ask ChatGPT to do a literature synthesis of the latest studies on hormone replacement, and it'll tell you like, oh, this is actually probably something you want to talk about. At the very least, have a conversation.
Well, and I think that conversation with the practitioner is so very important. But there is a big difference between what norms would be, say on a panel. So if you're thinking about hormone replacement, there's all the blood work that goes along with that, so you understand what's happening. But there's a big difference between normal and optimal. And so, how do you start to have those types of conversations? Because I don't know that every practitioner is equipped to really start to understand the differences between those things, and so there's a lot of information out there that you can glean on your own. But at the end, you're really trying to rely on the advice of a professional. So how do you think about that?
The biggest predictor or indicator of getting your hormones in sync is symptoms. Because people come and they can't sleep. That's probably the worst one, is the sleep deprivation, the sleep disturbances, the night sweats, and all of the vasomotor things that are happening when you're going through perimenopause and menopause. And that's usually what's going to bring you to the table to even have the conversation in the first place. So you can look at lab values, and that's going to be one metric that's going to guide the conversation. But how are you feeling?
Yeah.
Have the night sweats gotten better? Are you sleeping better? Oh, and let's talk about your brain fog. And are you still a psychopath when you weren't before? Those are all really important conversations to have.
And so, as we're kind of thinking about this, then I'd like to imagine it as a journey,
That
right?
is a
And along the way, there are certain steps that you want to take along the journey in order to get to your best destination, right? And so maybe you've decided, as you have, that you want to be able to keep your ability to do your handstand push-ups well into your hundreds, right?
Yep.
And so that's the journey. And along the way, that's the destination. And along the way, you've got these steps. What are some of the things people should be thinking about as steps along their journey to get to their destination of having a very long health span?
So the biggest predictor of excellent health span is the amount of muscle on your frame. This is critical because, as you know, as you get older, you are going to start to naturally lose muscle. It's called sarcopenia. And once you turn 40 in a decade, you can lose up to 10% of your muscle mass every 10 years. So that is something that you want to prevent as much as possible. And it's actually not that hard to do. What concerns me right now is the use of GLP-1s to lose weight, which I don't fault anybody for that. I totally get it. But you have to continue to strength train and make sure you're eating the right fuel so that you don't lose muscle. Because some of the studies that are coming out right now are that the significant amount of weight that's being lost is muscle. And that's a shame. You can tell people that are on it, right? They look like a candle that's melting, and you've got to keep muscle. So I have a lot of clients that are on GLPs, and they're doing awesome because they are doing their strength training, they're prioritizing their protein. But if you lose muscle, you're going to not protect your bones anymore. So the amount of muscle that you have on your frame will help prevent osteoporosis, which is when your bones start to dissolve, go away. We don't want that. As you get older, the biggest thing that's going to sabotage your health span is a fall with a fracture, right? So muscle is your longevity organ, and it's so important that we do everything we can to preserve and protect and build muscle.
That is a fantastic point, because when people think in general, and I'm generalizing a lot here, but people think I'm going to control my weight, so I'm going to do a lot of cardio. Right. So it's high intensity stuff. I'm going to spend time on the treadmill. I'm going to stair climb. I'm going to run. I'm going to do these things. But if you do those things in absence of true weight training, you run the risk of losing muscle along with any fat that you do lose. And to your point, that puts you in a higher risk category because you're losing your muscle instead of maintaining or even building muscle while losing that fat that you're trying to lose.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So a lot of women that come to me, they're like, I don't understand. I'm on the treadmill every day for an hour and I'm still 30 pounds heavier. And I want to be like, sister, stop. You are wasting so much precious time and energy, because part of it too is you're constantly secreting cortisol when you're doing these elliptical sessions, and you're like going and going, because trust me, I did it all. Cortisol is your fat storage hormone. We want to keep that, at bay. We don't want these big cortisol spikes all day long. So go to the gym, do a little bit of a warm up, and then you get right over there to the free weights, the dumbbells, and you've got to start picking up the heavy stuff. And it's not just, you'll see people at the gym and they've got their 5-pound weights and they're doing this. And I'm just like, I don't know what you're doing. Like, you're not, women are like, I don't want to turn into a bodybuilder. You're not going to turn into a bodybuilder. That's ridiculous. But if you don't stress your muscles out, cause a little bit of hypertrophy, they're not really going to change. So it's this getting over this misconception that cardio is king, because it's not, and that if they lift heavy, they're going to turn into a big bulky bodybuilder, which is insane, because if you've ever talked to a bodybuilder, it was really hard to get there. Like, that just doesn't happen on its own.
And I think that's an amazing statement, because you hear that all the time from women, and they'll say, I would go and lift weights, but I don't want to get bulky. But your point is, if you don't lift weights and lift heavy so that you have something for those muscles to push against, then maintaining the muscle and building muscle would be impossible. But to go along with that comes protein intake, right? Because that's got to be part of what drives muscle growth and muscle maintenance.
Absolutely. And what I find most commonly is when I start working with somebody, I'll say, okay, let's start logging. Show me like what a normal day, what a normal fueling looks like for you nutritionally. And their protein intake is abysmal. So, excuse me. It's very much about explaining, how do I hit my protein goal? How do I prioritize protein? Where do I get it from? What are good protein sources? Then, as with everything else, it's dispelling the myths, right? What do you mean I need to have 150 grams of protein? That can't possibly be healthy. I'm going to go into renal failure. And you hear all these things. And I'm just like, where do you get your information from? Like, this macronutrient is your best friend. You're nowhere near close to what you need. And the research now is actually saying we probably need more as women going through menopause and perimenopause. So we better figure out quickly how to get it into our fueling plan. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to build more muscle. And the other thing I wanted to mention about muscle mass is muscle is what keeps you metabolically active. So your BMR, your basal metabolic rate, that's how many calories we burn just existing, right? That is directly correlated to how much muscle mass you have on your frame. So if you put more muscle on your frame, guess what? You're going to burn more calories at rest. Doesn't that make complete sense to anybody who wants to change their body composition? I get people, they don't always need to lose weight, but they're skinny fat. So we've got to change their body composition by decreasing their body fat and increasing their skeletal lean muscle mass.
So if our first stop is kind of thinking about where our hormones are and making sure that we understand that, and then our second stop is making sure that we are building and maintaining muscle mass, where do we go from there?
Well, where we go from there is the consistency part, right? Because 50% of people are going to quit in 6 months. So I can put you on the most perfect plan in terms of your nutrition, your fitness, all of it. And in 6 months, half of the people are going to say, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to resort back to my bad habits. I want to go live back in my comfort zone. And I'm kind of over this whole thing. And that's where we've got to work on the mindset piece. Is this is not a diet. This is a lifestyle. This is how you need to approach the rest of your life if you don't want to end up with Alzheimer's, cancer, heart disease, or diabetes, right? Those are the 4 things that are going to kill us if we maintain an obese body. 4 things, proven, right? But they get kind of like, this is getting old, right? I don't want to eat any more chicken. And that's the tough part.
Yeah. It's interesting to think about it as a lifestyle versus a diet though, because, if you were to go out and kind of just log everything that you eat and do today, and that is truly just your lifestyle, right?
Right.
And so transitioning what you do and what you eat every day is, people label it a diet. But if you start thinking, well, this is how I eat and do to be healthy, that becomes your lifestyle instead, right? And so it's that transition period between understanding what you do today versus what you want or need to do in order to be the person you want to be. And once you get through that transition period, it's lifestyle again, right? And so it's really important for people to understand, to our earlier point, it's not a fad thing, because you can't really sustain that. You're looking for these changes you can make over time to get you where you want to be, and then sustain that as your new lifestyle.
And I think that's important, that word sustainability. You can't put somebody on some crazy plan that's unrealistic where they're just going to burn out. You've got to meet everybody where they're at and start in that middle ground, and then incrementally make the changes to help optimize your health and well-being. But if you do what you're supposed to do, you're going to feel so much better. And so it blows my mind when I'm like, you're feeling amazing. Your body composition has changed, yet you're going back to that? Like, you're going back to the Twinkies, the Oreos, and the root beer? Really? And that's the part of it that, psychologist, psychiatrist, somebody needs help with, because I get so frustrated. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what are you doing? We get this one life. We get this one body. We have got to take care of it. There's no do-overs. So, it's just really not taking anything for granted and saying, you know what? I got to do this for me, for my children, for my grandchildren, my future great-grandchildren, everybody who's going to depend on me. That's my why, is so I can show up and not be a burden to people when I'm older.
So, when you think about what people should be eating, as an example, it's, you start with the macronutrients, and you're kind of you're creating meal plans that just make sense. But are there any supplements that should go along with this nutrition in order to enhance the effects, or really help people, give people a leg up?
Absolutely. So, you've got to start with your whole foods. You've got to start with nutrition, but supplementation is really important. So I have my 3 kind of critical supplements that I encourage all of my clients to take. Number 1 is creatine. Creatine is such an important supplement. And for so long, women were like, I should take creatine. Like, I thought that was for, the bodybuilders and the gym, the dudes. And it's like, no, what we know is the research is telling us that creatine is going to help with your muscle mass, which we need. It's going to help with your brain health, which is so important. You're taking a supplement that is very safe, very effective, very cheap, and it's going to help prevent Alzheimer's disease, dementia, Parkinson's disease. Like, sign me up. So creatine is a no-brainer. It is the safest supplement. I would say, for your listeners, if you decide to start taking creatine, the only thing is you've got to drink enough water. You cannot be somebody who doesn't drink a lot of water and then add creatine, because that can be stressful for your kidneys. So drink a lot of water, add your creatine, and it's going to change your life. The
Yeah.
second supplement is collagen
Mm.
protein, which is excellent for your joints, your cartilage, your tendons, your skin, your hair, your nails. To me, I take collagen every day. One scoop is 15 grams of protein. I usually do 2 over the course of a day. That's 30 grams towards my total protein goal. Again, no brainer. It's going to help. And then the last one is whey protein. I do 1 scoop of whey protein after my strength workouts. And again, when you work out, you lift weights, you're causing these like tiny little micro tears in your muscles. What I tell people is you take your protein after your workout, and it's the glue that kind of puts everything back together. So I tell my clients your workout's not done until your post-workout protein is in your body. Then you can tell me that you're done with your workout. So there are 3. There's a ton out there, but those would be my top 3 that are not that expensive, very, very safe, very effective.
Yeah, the point you bring about creatine is one that is very important, and it's really top of mind these days because there's a lot of research happening around brain function and creatine, and how the dosing matters, but it can make a difference in long-term brain health when you're thinking about a supplement that also can have an effect on muscle tissue. And so, for listeners who are thinking about creatine, can you talk a little bit about how it works with intracellular fluid and how that and why that water is very important, but also about the dosing for women versus men, because I've seen a lot of research on the men's side that says, hey, for exercise, 5 grams is great, but you got to be 10 or more if you're thinking about the brain health function. So just curious if that's different in the research for women.
Mm-hmm. So creatine is a normal nutrient. If you eat a steak, right, you eat creatine. So, but we don't get enough of it. And basically what it does is it helps to push water in the cells. So your ability to make ATP, which is the energy of your cell, is more optimized. It's a, layman's term. So a couple things about creatine. Number 1 is you've got to take it every day. And it takes about 2 weeks to really get into the muscles and saturate and get full effect. Now, sometimes I'll hear people say, oh, I feel bloated. I gained 2 pounds of water weight or whatever. That's okay. It's going to go away. Like, don't freak out. And we can talk about the scale later, but stay off the scale. So for women, what I recommend is 2.5 grams a day to start and just see how you feel. Sometimes it gives people a little bit of stomach discomfort. Sometimes people feel really, really bloated, but 2.5 is a good starting point, and then you can work your way up. I do 5 grams a day every day. I've been doing it for years, and that works really well for me. Back in the day, they recommended this whole loading phase and 20 grams a day. You don't need to do that anymore. They found that that's not necessary. It's very safe and very effective. But it does push water in the cells, so you might get a little bit bloated initially. I promise you it'll go away. Do not worry.
And why are we staying away from the scale?
Oh my gosh. The bathroom scale was created by the devil himself, and he wants you to just not be healthy, right? So your weight is going to fluctuate by several pounds throughout the day, day to day. And that is not a great representation of what's going on with your body composition. And so what I do is I'm like, you can weigh yourself on Fridays. That's it. I don't want you on the scale Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Stay off the scale. Things that are going to impact your body weight. Fluid is the biggest one. If you wake up tomorrow and you're 2 pounds heavier, you had some sodium, too many carbs, fluid. That's all it is. If you haven't pooped in a while, you're going to weigh more. If you're sweating a lot, you're going to weigh less. And your hormones, if you're about to get your period, you're going to weigh more. People attach such emotional value to that number on the scale, and it's terrible. So once a week, guys, is all you need to worry about weighing yourself. And even that, I don't have a scale. I don't really care what it says. I know how I feel, how I look, how my clothes fit, how my energy level is. Those are much better indicators. And if you're really worried, do progress photos.
Hmm.
Put your bathing suit on, stand in front of the mirror, take a couple selfies, and then look at it month to month. If you're on a good program, you're going to notice some pretty significant changes.
I am so on board with staying away from the scale and with progress photos. I think you know more about how things feel and how things fit than the scale is going to tell you. And I have personally fallen into the trap of, oh, let me weigh myself every day, and those short term fluctuations just happen from
Mhm.
day to day. You're not going to really see if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to lose pounds. You're not going to see that on a day to day thing. It's going to happen at the end of a week or maybe even longer, right? The trick for taking the progress photos though is using the video camera, because you can sit the phone down, turn on the video, and then you can just screenshot your photos, and then you've got them, right? It makes it really easy to take your selfies, but I think that that's a really good way to monitor progress, and you can see how far you've gone even when the scale doesn't change, and it helps people. I think it makes things more sustainable, because then you really do know that I am making progress and I'm headed towards my target.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, if your goal is changing body composition, the bathroom scale is not the
Good
right
point.
measurement for body composition. So there are ways to measure. In our clinic, we have an InBody scanner, which is good, but it's not great. An InBody scanner is a whole body analysis of fat, muscle, bone, fluid, and it's a good tool, but it's not always 100%. If you really want to know how much body fat and bone density you're dealing with, you'll need a DEXA scan, which is something that you can get from your provider, but that's the gold standard. And really, if you're a female going through menopause, you probably should get a DEXA scan to make sure that your
Mm.
bones are strong. You don't have any sort of osteopenia, which is weakening of the bones, or osteoporosis. And no, okay, here's my body fat, right? Here's my percentage, and where you're going with that. I see people, they come to me and they're at 50% body fat. That is
Mm.
significantly unhealthy. And so it's not about vanity, it's about life and death. And if you're at 50% body fat, we've got some work to do.
Hmm. So where else, or are there any other steps along the journey people should be thinking about as they're kind of wrapping their brains around the conversation that we've been having today?
I think the big thing is you're playing the long game, right?
Mm.
So when you're ready to get on a plan, find the right person, find somebody who's a good fit for you, somebody you jive with, somebody you can, really relate to. I think that's important. But just know that you're playing the long game here. And, your nutrition has got to be dialed in. So stop going out to dinner so much. Like, really change the way that you're fueling your body, because that's going to be a bigger part of it, right? Nutrition is a lot bigger than exercise when you put them side by side.
Hmm.
You can't out exercise a bad diet. That's so true. And
Yeah.
so figure out what your fueling is going to look like. Figure out, how to meal prep, go to Costco, buy a bunch of protein, and just use your resources and be smart. Nobody has time to spend 6 hours in the kitchen meal prepping every week. Like, you got to
Right.
make it easy and simple and automated. And then you got to change your life. You got to start getting up earlier so that you have more time, so that you're not being reactive, but you're in the driver's seat of your life. I like to work out in the morning. It sets the tone for the rest of my day. I don't mind getting up when the sun comes up. Feels good. It feels
Hmm.
like, I'm up, nobody else is. Like, I've got a leg
It's
up
the
of every,
best.
right? It's hard though, right? To get up that early. Like, it's not easy. You just want to snuggle back in bed, but it's like, get up, it's time.
It's time. And
And
then
then,
the excuse is gone, right? Because you've gotten up, you've done it, and no
yeah.
matter what else happens during the day, you've done it. So,
And then rally your people, your family, your friends, your community. It's hard
mm,
to do it by yourself. So grab a friend, like get an accountability person. And that way you're like, well, I got to go because I don't want to let Sherry down, and it's
Right.
law is going to help as well. Tell people what you're trying to do so they don't try to, bully you into something. And the last thing, because we haven't talked about alcohol. Alcohol's not your friend. It's never going to be your friend. And if you're serious about changing your body composition, you probably want to break up with alcohol. There is zero upsides to alcohol. People are like, oh, there's some studies about heart health. That's nonsense. Like, you'd have to drink like 12 gallons of red wine to see any of it. So break up with alcohol, break up with the junk food. They're not your friends, and they never will be.
Yeah. So if people are like, man, this sounds like me, I need to do something, how do they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So my website is called mastermenopause.com. And I'm also on Instagram. I'm on all socials, but it's Dr. Christine Boev. And just shoot me a message. We can hop on a call just like this and figure out if we're a good fit for each other.
That's awesome. I'll make sure I link that in the description for the episode. So if people are driving and doing other things, they can go back and click on it, make sure that they get it. This has been phenomenal. I feel like I've learned lots of new information, and I better understand what it is that that women are dealing with, and it really does correspond very nicely with what men deal with, but it's a little different, right? And so it's neat to kind of understand the differences there, and that there is actual clinical research that people can be pointed to that tells them a little bit more about how they should address things. And I love the work that you're doing. I think it's extremely important, and I think that people are really should just reach out if they have any questions, because you seem so approachable. And after I've spent some time kind of looking around your website and learning some things myself, I'm going to point people your way for sure.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. My goal is to help as many women as possible just look and feel their best. So if that's you, just, shoot me a message.
Well, thank you for spending some time with me.
You are welcome.
If you've made it this far, then I have to thank you for your time. I hope you've learned something new and enjoyed listening to the discussion as much as I enjoyed having it. I'd love to hear from you about the show, because we're working really hard to bring you great content, and the feedback really helps us get better. If you like what you've heard or watched, for those of you who are streaming out on YouTube, then take a split second to give us a thumbs up or a like. It really helps other people like you find the show too. And no one likes to miss out on the good stuff. So go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't have to wonder when or if there's a new episode. And until next time, stay remarkable.